This is a really special place for me. I'm on the Staffs and Worcester Canal, and this is Debdale Lock, Cookley. I'll describe why it is particularly special, this lock, in a moment. But I'm remembering a time in the early 60s when I was about 5 and my family bought a boat. There's a photograph of it in this book. It's a 16-foot cruiser, and packed onto it are my dad, myself, one of my brothers, my uncle, my auntie, their 2 children, and then hidden at the back in the shadows is my mother. I'm holding this book because this project is something I finished recently with Alarum Productions, and it's all about how women got involved in saving canals like this. So going back to the book and back to the start of our journey. We had a small cruiser and we would go out for little trips at weekends. We moored at Ashwood Marina, which is a few miles away. And a trip was not easy because it was so weedy and difficult to travel along the canal that the engine would cut out. There were little things called shear pins, and it's a bit like a fuse, and the engine would cut out when the fuse broke. So this is a little piece from the book, which is what my mother told an interviewer. Shear pins. It was an outboard engine, and if you hit anything in the water and it was going to stop the engine, it used to break a little pin called a shear pin. To get out of the basin onto the main Staffordshire and Worcestershire Canal, it was very, very weedy. So we'd set off for an afternoon cruise, and after about 5 minutes we'd break a shear pin. So we'd have to change it, have another go, and 5 minutes or so later we broke another shear pin. So we didn't get out onto the main line for a long time, and we kept running out of shear pins. After a few years we actually changed the boat because my family got so involved in helping to save the waterways that they bought a boat not dissimilar to the one that's about to come into this lock. Our boat was an old Fellows, Morton and Clayton boat, and it was half sunk at the time. It was called Laurel, and what my dad did was to preserve the back cabin and build a new cabin along the front so that we could actually spend leisure time on the boat. In those days, if you filled a lock too quickly, it would become full of foam because of the chemicals in the water. You can still get a bit of foam today, but not as badly as it was in those days. And in fact, I remember when our little cruiser was completely covered in foam, and the foam would disappear, but it would leave black marks behind. And who had to clean up the black marks? My mother. So we joined the Staffs and Worcester Canal Society, and they did a lot of wonderful stuff to help preserve canals in the region. The Stourbridge Canal, for instance, they did a lot of labour there, men and women. I've actually got here the first rally brochure for the first Staffs and Worcester Canal Society rally that we went to. And a rally is when you get a gathering of boats to publicise the fact that the canal is an asset. Come and look at the canal. Look at the boats. And there were all sorts of activities like tug of wars between boats. There were fashion parades on the top of our boat, actually. Our narrow boat was 70 feet long, and we had fashion models across the top. Don't think that would happen today. What I'm leading up to is the reason why I like being at Debdale Lock, although I do have mixed feelings. And that is because as I was growing up, I became fascinated with rally queens. And my scrapbook was full of pictures of rally queens from newspaper cuttings. And I obviously wanted to be a rally queen. And so in 1975, I actually became a rally queen. And this is where I was crowned. I want to read a poem from this book. It's a very short poem that I wrote about rally queens. And on the same page there are a couple of photos. One of them is from my scrapbook, which shows the rally queens perched on the top of cruisers being displayed. So, okay, rally queen. Not the best attire for boating. Tight, short skirt, tiara and stockings, high-heeled shoes, precariously posed and pretty. Rally queen, centre of attention, figurehead on a cruiser cabin, best of three, smiling, waving. Later she will give out prizes for cruiser handling, best galley, outboard, inboard, or best dressed boat. And of course I left that line at the end of this poem because I was thinking about the women dressing the boat. And in those days, in the 60s and 70s, women tended to be the dressing rather than acknowledging what they did. And this, I did Canals' book. In fact, if you look at the back cover, you can see all of the women that we interviewed who did not just, well, in fact, I don't think any of these were rally queens, but they did a lot of important work to save canals like the Staffs and Worcester Canal.